the University of New Mexico, where I got my degree. I knew the head of the anatomy department, and luckily for me, he was. I showed him some work, and he liked my work, and he said, "Come back in a few days, and I'll show you a new specimen." It was a head that was cut in half, and the reason it was cut in half is that the people who are going to be doctors or whatever, researchers, can see the inside of the head, of the face. And so I saw the two parts. I actually put them together, put them apart, and I knew that I had to photograph them that way. A man kissing himself. It could be the ego, it could be the id, it could be his identification in life. But it's like you're looking at two profiles of the man, one from the left, one from the right, and you know it's the same. But the power of this photograph is the fact that the meaning of it is the ego and personal identity. And in art history, I don't believe anyone has made an image like this. I photographed this, I positioned them. I spent more time actually on this fabric to make that right, and then later on the printing to open this up, and the negative was cut. I had planned for that, but of course I shot about 4 or 5 exposures and nothing moved. So I had to have enough to basically work with. And but it's a very, very good photograph. I mean, I think that's one of my best photographs, and it's got to be, when I die, after I die, I know that this is going to be an important image in the history of photography. I think when I die, I'm going to have my head split open that way. This woman was a woman called Big Ann, and she was really a big one. And I wanted to photograph her because she was very, very distinctive, And look at that arm and that hand. That's a big, big, big person. And I did get a monkey from the anatomy department at the university. And I got this tubing, and what it's about is the fact that she's breathing the air from a dead animal. It's a metaphor for destructive life, like what people do to harm themselves. See, I mean, she's not breathing fresh air, she's breathing death. I was on this train, and this guy comes in with this little skateboard, and he's begging for money. And of course, he was dressed. But I said, I gotta photograph this guy. And I made arrangements to photograph him at a studio photographer I knew. And it was fantastic. The fact that his arms seemed to be longer because he had to use his arms, whatever, because he didn't have legs. And he was very comfortable. I placed him on the skateboard, helped him. And this was in the back. This triangle, which was perfect. And I put that drape up, and this was very, very important, this shape. And the rest was done in printing. But his eyes, look at his eyes. You don't know where he is looking, and that's what I love about it. That's why I selected that particular negative. In a way, it's a photograph that hopefully the viewer can see my concern and passion and love of where this guy was coming from. And in my family, my grandmother, my mother's mother, who I lived with my mother because she was divorced from my father, she, on her wedding day, she was Italian, and on her wedding day, she fell down a flight of stairs and really hurt both her legs. Mm-hmm. And of course, being peasants in Italy, they were afraid of going to the doctor, and the legs got even more and more pussy, and the legs were dying after many, many years. And it was hard. And my mother, she lived with my mother and my brother and my sister, and every morning mother would clean my grandmother's legs. And I would smell the legs, and there'd be breakfast too. So there was pain and odoriferousness, the odor, and breakfast to start the day. And it was, I think that experience made me a lot more sensitive to people who aren't, I don't say normal, but who have to live their lives with the conditions that they found themselves in. Went to this facility through my guide that had, it was a hospital that had human remains and all kinds of other stuff, frozen and unfrozen. And so I saw the foot, saw the leg, saw the hand. I saw the fetus too, and this hand. This hand is the whole brace of it. I went out when I found this hand and preparing for the shot. I found sticks, in the city to hold this up, and then I shot for vegetables and fish and everything else, and put this together. And I think it's a very, very important image. It's grotesque in what I made the image from, but you lose that, at least I do, when I look at it, and hopefully other people do lose it, because it parallels, it tells a story about living in life, and the mystery of living in life, whether it's the person is interested in the supernatural or just the physical, as an unbeliever. It's something about, how we live, where we're living, what things mean, what they don't mean, and we have to make our own choices. And it's a great one. This alone is going to get me to heaven. This came from a painting, right? And now I forget the name of the painting. I think it was an American artist, and I photographed the painting and made a print of it. But I asked her to measure from her forehead to her arms if she was doing this, and with those rough measurements, it made it, because I made it too long so I could cut it. And this was I believe a dog fetus from the university. And she had no problems with this. It was great. I had these wonderful gloves. I think I gave her the gloves. And did you make that up? Yeah, you did that. And Cynthia did this, and the dots. And I think it's a wonderful portrait of a person whose face you don't see. This particular woman I got to know socially, and I figured she'd be great. The smile is so wonderful. You can't define if she's passive or thinking about something or about to say something, and the eyes are just perfect the way I printed this. There's enough information there to know she has eyes, but it makes you believe that she's thinking as she is looking at the viewer. find things to photograph before I make a photograph. Because in history, a lot of artists were condemned, for what they did, and especially against the Catholic Church, would say. But if a person like me has an honest way of visualizing life as they see it, feel it through literature, through history, you're compelled to make work, to show that need, and to basically, not that it's going to explain everything, but it's, in the process anyway, it's going to be the basis of understanding and pictorial growth. Because once you've done something that you found was extremely hard, then things become possibly easier. You want to work with complex people, situations, again, and the criteria of my work is that no work looks like it. That's number one, and that's a given. I think any real artist is making work that way, right? It has the stamp of the person's soul. And then the subject matter I choose is about history and contemporary life, what's found good, what's found bad, and it's been, I don't work anymore, I'm retired, because I don't have the energy. And then seeing work that I've done years ago, it's kind of hard to relate to because I haven't seen it. Of course, I have the master prints in my studio, but I don't go to the studio and look at the work. I mean, I don't do it. But I think the most important thing is not to talk about money, but the fact that it was made and exists and it's doing its job. And I think that the job is that it's confronting people with the conditions of how I see the world. So this was very intriguing to me. You see the posts that this form, the rib cage, etc., the shoulders, the arms are suspended and held up by. And I took more time choosing the fabric that was the mask to cover his eyes. And I found this one that had these two daisies, and that made sense to me. Everything is kind of random. And so I posed everything here, and then put the head on because the bones were holding the inside up. And I had to work very, very quickly because it could fall, and I didn't want to damage the specimen that came from the medical department at the University of New Mexico. And but it's good. I mean, I've never seen an image like this. I think that's one of my criteria, and it's good. I wanted to make a portrait of him that wasn't him somehow, but he was the kind of impetus for it. And I made, of course, I painted the background in my studio black, and I made these circles. And then I knew I could fit him in. And of course I took his legs off in the negative, scratching them. And he was so perfect, he loved it. And actually his arms were over here somewhere. Obviously if this were fabric, the fabric would be covering his arms, And, but it's the way it was printed. I mean, this is made by bleaching the print. And the same for this. And if you leave it on long enough, before you put it in the hypo to arrest, you know, what it's doing to the silver, it'll turn bleachy, you know. But if you do it quick and everything, it's emotionally printed. And it's the same way I photograph people and things. And how I got this dark, I first burn this in and then open this up with ferrocyanide, potassium ferrocyanide, just enough to make these shapes happen. This was a painting on the wall of this attic. I was shown a man's home, but it was in Europe, and I liked that wallpaper. And then I thought about what I can do, and one thing led to the other, and I was able to make a sketch. I knew I could use a severed arm that was set. You know, that was the beginning of this whole concept. And actually the grapes are covering up whatever it took to hold the rest of the arm up, see? And then I like this little Venus, and the clock is wonderful. And that was a clock that was owned by the man who owned the space I photographed in. And in this case, I really wanted to mark and scratch, but I'm dealing in this case with a few negatives because nothing is moving, you know? And so I may have 6 or 7 just to cover myself. But this was the first one I scratched, and I do this emotionally on the negative. And I just believe that I'm going to do the right thing. This is a very, very beautiful photograph. It's a tribute to the poet, this Anna Akhmatova, who a lot of people don't know because she was Russian. But I wrote poetry for a while. I was at Columbia University, and I did some research on different poets, and I liked her work. And